Welcome, welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Sierra Godfrey, author of A Very Typical Family. We're going to be chatting with her today about her debut novel and a time when she got closer to her family from an unexpected event. Welcome, Sierra.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. What is something that you feel connected to right now in your life?
Oh gosh, well, I'm gonna have to go with the seasonal answer on that one. Oh gosh, at the beginning of October, and I live in California. It is so beautiful. Just a little bit of crispness in the morning, and the light is starting to be more golden. And you can hear owls hooting at night, and it's just really, it's lovely. So I'm loving the season, loving taking walks, looking at just the trees and I'm loving it. So I'm very connected to the weather and the season at the moment.
You said two of my very favorite things, Sierra, owls and trees. I'm like, yes,
Yeah,
magical. Yeah.
yeah, and I live in an urban area, but we hear you'd be amazed at how many owls are hiding in the trees around our houses, I guess. So we hear them hooting softly at night. It's really lovely.
Mhm. What is happening behind your wall or behind you
So
on your wall?
yeah, so I've got a couple things that randomly represent my personality. I've got the rabbit head, which there we go. That one. I love rabbits. I even have a rabbit mug here happening. I don't know. I just love them. And they sort of creep into everything. I saw that and I'm like, I gotta have a rabbit head on my wall. And then the print is a data display from Edward Tufte's book. And I'm a technical writer for my day job. And so it's very much tied to my experience of being a tech writer. And then my jacket hanging up is a Santa Cruz sweatshirt. So it's kind of all of me on the wall.
hmm With the rabbits, where did that love and fascination come from?
I don't know. I guess I could say it's because I'm year of the rabbit, according to Chinese zodiac, but I don't know. I think that they are quiet, introverted, very soft, very cute, and it's hard to see them. So there's just something
Mhm.
precious and precious and small about them. I don't know. I have a ton of them everywhere I look, and it surprises me even sometimes. I'm like, wow, I have a lot of rabbits. Like looking at them, their long ears, they're just lovely.
Mhm.
Explain it.
They are. They're very beautiful, soft creatures. I definitely can see that. Can
Yeah.
you share with our listeners and viewers what a very typical family is all about?
Absolutely. So it follows the Walker family, which is based in Santa Cruz, and it follows main character Natalie, who's 32 and living in Boston when the novel starts. But when she was 18, she got her older brother and sister sent to prison after a messy night of chaos. So this fractures the family, and she hasn't been in contact at all with her siblings or really her mother since. They just kind of fractured everywhere, and she's estranged. And now her mother has passed away and left the family Victorian to all three siblings. But the catch is they have to be there together in person to inherit it. So it's really about siblings, and the sister Lynn has a kid who serves as the bridge between Lynn and Natalie, but their brother Jake who lives in Santa Cruz, is missing for most of well, he's missing. I'll just leave it at that. And so, yeah, it's about the hurt that we cause in families, and ultimately about our concept of home and choosing as adults to have relationships with family members. And I find that fascinating because I'm an only child, and I'm very curious about the ways in which adult siblings choose to continue to have that tight relationship. Um, clearly I understand they have that foundation as a child, but what happens when you become adults? You're all different people. What brings you back together? What holds you together?
Hmm. I loved your book for multiple reasons, but one place I really related to is the essence of finding home that's not blood related, of what that means, and also being estranged from your family. And so the way that you built that was so beautiful, of creating what you grew up with and also your different direction at different points in your life of what that decides to be in that moment.
Yeah, I didn't set out to write the story to focus on those, but that's what came out. That's what naturally came out and really became the core of this. And um, it was really nice to explore that. And I certainly um, have had moments where I've chosen, as an only child, I've chosen families, right? And when I married my husband, he has a very large family, and that was honestly a wonderful draw because I would get to have a huge family. And I grew up not close by geographically to my cousins, who were very much like, siblings in the absence of. So um, I think there probably have been times over my life where I've chosen who's going to be my family before I made my own family.
Mm-hmm. What did you notice were the three most important things to Natalie?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. um, I think forgiveness. She's constantly seeking forgiveness. She's never quite sure. You know, the story is that she called the police on her brother and sister when they said not to, and she felt it was the right thing to do, and they said don't do it, but she did it. So there was a lot of there's a feeling of guilt, I think, for her, of not listening, but also knowing that she had to. So it was kind of being in this really hard, impossible situation. So there's guilt, there's forgiveness, seeking forgiveness from they're older siblings, so she always feels like she looked up to them. They took care of her when she was much younger, and in some respects stepped in as a parent figure for her when their father died and their mother was grieving. And she still seeks that parental approval thing, I think. So I think those are really important. And then the other thing she's dealing with is job satisfaction. She's not professionally reached what she wanted to reach, and the novel opens with certain expectations on her part in terms of where her job is, and she's not correct about those expectations and assumptions. So she has to really decide what she wants out of work professionally, and to be satisfied with what she wants to do for life, and work and job. And so she's sort of struggling with that. She's at a turning point with that as we start the story.
Mm-hmm. What is the essence of home for Natalie?
Her essence of home is being with her her brother and her sister, definitely. And I said it in one of these, what I imagine, one of these beautiful Victorians in Santa Cruz. There are several of them. I said it in a Victorian because they're huge. I kind of envisioned these adult people living with each other and moving around each other, and I wanted a big setting for that. um, but I think that you've got the house that plays a part in that concept of home, but it really isn't about the house. It really is the people in it, and who have been there and who come in there and who will come there in the future.
Mm-hmm. When you were writing your novel about the siblings, what were you surprised to learn about Natalie, Lynn, and Jake's relationship?
Well, originally this novel started out much differently. It started out as a different story entirely, where Natalie was living overseas, married to some person, and they eventually, she gets a package in the mail, and it's about the house, and she feels compelled to come back. And as I went through revisions, over time, it was like all that just strips away to really, it really became a sibling story. I think originally when I wrote it, the sibling aspect was sort of a side plot, but it just was the loudest, and it became very obvious that that had to be the biggest point of the book, to help to really delve into and explore. So that was a little surprising, and I think again, I drew on that concept of what does make home, and who is family. And I have two sons, and they're about 5 years apart, which is a big gap. And so they're in very different stages. One's in high school and one's in elementary school still, and they're not in the same place, and they're not friends. And I mean, I get that because they're 5 years apart, but I wonder a lot. I spend a lot of time wondering, will they be friends? How long will it take? Will it have to be in their 30s by the time it sort of evens out to get to where they can be on some kind of understanding with each other? It's kind of interesting, what was their future going forward, and what will their concept of family be, because they didn't grow up very tightly knit. So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I always find it very fascinating, like the birth order of being the only child versus, the older, middle, younger sibling, like different characteristics that each identity takes within the family.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think that that definitely played into these characters, the Walker family. Natalie is very impetuous, and a little unreliable, and a little shaky on where she is and who she is. And that comes from being the youngest of the three. Lynn, the middle, is much more grounded. Even though she went through a rough time, she knows who she is. And Jake, the oldest, is the most successful of the three. He's a marine biologist. He's got his own lab. He's been very successful in life, and he's very driven. So that's kind of that oldest sibling persona a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I love how you brought in your book, Sierra, how Natalie takes time to step away from what she knows and feels familiar to allow herself to step into this space that's very uncertain and scary, to find a different sense of home. Is there a space in your life where you've had a situation similar to that?
To stepping into the unknown. Yeah, I mean, I think many times I lived in many different places growing up. I lived out of the country, I lived in different states. And each time you do that, particularly when you come back to the country, we lived in Greece. My mother and I lived in Greece when I was a kid for a little bit. When we came back, it was difficult. The re-entry was difficult. And I think, it didn't always go well. People, made assumptions that I don't know what they thought I was doing, but it was difficult. It was a difficult acclimation. And I think, that was a lot of unknown, and you just gotta do what you can do with who you are. And, I think anybody who moved around a lot and had to start a new school a lot, as they were growing up, can probably relate that there is no real option except to just keep going with who you are and see what shakes out.
Yeah, for sure. Adapt with what you have.
Yeah. And it doesn't always turn out well, but you got to use your contextual clues to figure it out. And that's what I hoped Natalie does in this novel as well, is that she figures it out. She's not settled as a person, and she doesn't always have the right answer. But she's using what she's got. And I really wanted her to be in a different place by the time the novel ended, with who she was and how she feels about that.
Yes. I love how you did that too, that you see a lot of the character growth, transitioning as she's doing the movement with her family and the setting and all of that. You did such a beautiful job with that. Santa Cruz is the setting of the book, but also where you live.
I don't live there currently. I live in the Bay Area, but I grew up in Santa Cruz. So it is absolutely my sense of home. I know that in the novel I spend a little time talking about the sights and the smells and the senses, the way that it triggers the senses, and it absolutely does that for me. Every time I'm driving into Santa Cruz, and we get down there a couple times a year. It definitely triggers all those old embedded senses of home, of just childhood for me. So,
Mm.
I think definitely the way that the novel was always going to be about a sense of core home. It had to be set there, and it just felt very natural to set it there for me, and especially describing it. And it's a little bit of a love letter, to growing up into the city. So it was a pleasure to set it there, and it allowed us to go down and under the guise of research. I gotta go look at houses. I gotta go, remember what this looked like so I can describe it.
The fun area. Do you like doing that kind of research, Sierra,
I
of
love
exploring?
it. I love it. I could spend hours on Google Maps, and I will drill down. I will walk streets through Google View. I love it. I mean, I would love to go visit all the places where I set stories. That's not always possible, but um, yeah, I love it. I'll use anything I can. I'll read up articles. I'll Google Map it. It's great. It's one of my favorite parts. And I can go down research rabbit holes too. So I have to rein that in a little bit sometimes.
Go down the rabbit holes with your rabbits.
Yeah. Them guiding me on the wall.
What are a few of the sensory details that's memories of being in Santa Cruz that you remember most?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's an easy one. It's the smell of the sea. It's that salty, almost a little rotten smell of the briny sea kelp kind of a thing. There's the screams of people riding the Giant Dipper at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. You can hear that in the distance. Um, you can hear echoes of the sea lions quite far in from the coast barking. Um, it's the fog, the coastal fog, which it covers everything until it burns off into just a gorgeous, cloud-free, sun, incredibly blue sky day. So it's also the coastal pine and redwoods as you come into Santa Cruz. You're coming through the Santa Cruz Mountains usually if you're coming from the north, um, and you get that really foresty smell of pine and that sort of dark shadowy redwood. Is just lovely. It's really lovely. So a whole bunch of
Mm.
whole bunch of sensory. And then of course, when I come in, it's the visual for me. It's seeing those old streets that it's not a huge town. So chances are I'm going down a street I had gone down many, many, many times as a kid. So yeah,
The nostalgia of going down those streets and all the feelings that come
all the
with
feelings that come, which can be good, they can be bad, they can be indifferent. I think
it.
there's a lot to play with there.
Mhm.
And I actually was working on my second novel, just finishing up edits on that. And I have a character coming home. It's just a brief part of that, and I wanted her to deal with that. Like, what does that mean? What is? I guess I'm still dealing with the concept of home. What does that say to her? And so I stopped for a minute and tried to think what it meant, and it did define her, that scene in particular that I was writing, how she felt coming home, coming up the hill on a long street that she.
Do you think that just from your journey that the feelings and essence of home change as we age and with our experiences and
Oh,
whatnot?
absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. In fact, in surprising ways, I thought for years and years that Santa Cruz would only really feel like home, but as it turns out, um, I lived in a town with a lot of open space where you could just take these really beautiful walks. And for several years while living there, I would just take walks all the time. And, they were beautiful walks with just these hills and open space. And um, I didn't realize till years later when I left it how much I missed that, how much that worked for me, how much that was home. And so where I live now, it's not perfect. Nowhere is perfect. And I think there's a part of me that's always like, well, it would be so much better if I were living in, say, Santa Cruz, if I could live there. But actually, I live in a space where if I walk up high enough, I can see the city, the San Francisco skyline, and it's really lovely, and I'm really lucky. And I think over the years that has really turned into home. And if I were not here, I would miss it. And that's to me what okay, if you can miss it, then you know that it was a good sense of home.
Mm-hmm.
And community too plays a big part. Um, you know, I've built community where I am, and I didn't know when I moved here that what an integral part your community is, in whatever way you find it. But it's incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'll have to think about that one, community, a little bit more. But I'm getting an idea. But it's really
Brainstorming for your next book.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, always. Yeah, at the most inopportune moments too, right? Like I was walking the dog this morning and I'm like, oh yeah, and I could do this and that and that. I'm like, God, I can't write any of this down. I'm walking the dog. Always comes to me in the shower or walking the dog.
Mhm. I've thought about this quite often, that it would be really cool if there was some sort of gadget that you could, like, like an earphone plug into your
Yes,
ear, and
yes.
your thoughts could, like, go into this recording, and it would just be there when you got home, like all the
Yes,
thoughts while you're walking.
I also have wanted this gadget, or when you're lying in bed about to
Mhm.
fall asleep and all the ideas, and you've solved every novel problem in your head, everything, every plot issue. I would just like to shoop because I don't even write it down. I'll remember that in the morning. No, never, never. I'm lucky I even remember that I had the thought, let alone what it was. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think it all goes in the hopper, right? It all swirls around in there and comes out when you're writing, and that's one of the best things about writing stories is you never know how it's quite going to come out. I did not, like I said earlier, set out to write a sibling story about home, but that's what came out, and I liked it a lot that's what happened.
Mhm.
It felt right.
Tell us about a time when there was an uncertain event or an event that happened that brought you closer to your own family.
Um, I wouldn't say there's a specific event, but I will say that my cousins and I feel very close to my cousins because, again, I'm an only child. They all have siblings, but I need them a lot more, maybe. And so, as adults, we all got married or had kids, and, that closeness from childhood went away a little bit. But as adults, we came together, and I don't even remember why or what or who, but somebody recognized that we needed to reconnect. And most of my cousins are down in Southern California. So we just all went to Disneyland as adults. It was like the cousin Disney day. And I mean, it was so good. And we talk while we're standing in line. Lines for those rides can be like an hour or a half hour. And that's the best part. It isn't about the rides and isn't about the Disney experience. It's about standing in a line, sort of trapped, and just that's where the conversations go. And since then, we've been able to do that, even though Disneyland is a thing and it's, expensive and it's a whole, day. It's like a commitment. It facilitates those conversations in a weird way for us. So we've continued and it's very special. It's really, and we even would not take our kids. We would just go just as adults, just us. And it was we've had some of the best conversations standing in line for rides. We're like, oh, is that an hour long wait? Let's get in that one. Just so we can, spend time together.
That whole thought of your inner child, like bringing all of your inner childs together, makes my heart so happy of play and wonder and connection. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard to find that time and that space as adults, when you've got your own life and your own family, where you're gonna we're actually all talking about where should we get together next, if not Disneyland. Should it be should we all go to Las Vegas or some kind of space for us to be in? And it's funny because I think subconsciously we're all thinking like what would facilitate the best space for us to reconnect in busy lives. And, a year or two can go between seeing each other. So it's, how do adults come together? Thought for another novel. How do people reconnect? What space does that look like? Fascinating.
Your novel is your debut.
Yes, thank you.
What has been something fun and surprising for you that you didn't expect on your journey so far?
I think hearing some of the feedback on this from people who were estranged from their siblings has been a total surprise to me. And them saying, I wanted to reach out to I had somebody DM me and say, I wanted to reach out to my estranged brother after reading this. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. That is huge. I mean, I'm just writing a story. And I think I didn't expect it to touch people. I mean, you want it to touch people. Obviously, that's why we do this, but I was hoping it would, but you never know. And that was incredible. And I'm just like, do it, contact them. We only have one life. There's only one story. It's your story. Go contact him and fix those things. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But that was an incredible surprise to me, and really lovely to hear. And I've heard that from a couple different people. So yeah, that's amazing. The whole publishing journey has been amazing and nothing like I expected. It's not in a bad way, just different. And I think as a writer, you focus very hard on, getting an agent and, polishing your manuscript, but you don't think necessarily of what comes after so much of the actual selling of the book and the publishing. So I think for me, the post, so the book was acquired, and then the journey from signing the contract to publication day that year was so interesting because I didn't know what would happen at all. Going through a couple rounds of edits and then copy edits and then proofreading and covers and blurbs, and all of that has been incredibly fun and fascinating to learn about. So.
Yep. It's a whole new world that you hear about, but it's never exactly the same from hearing and actually experiencing.
Yeah, you don't hear too much about it. You really don't. People don't talk about that as much, about that year, about that preparation time. What's to be expected. There's a couple books out there that do tell you, but luckily I'm part of a really good group of writers. We're all represented by the same agent. We're our agent sibling group. And so there's different levels of experience in that group. And some of the ones who have had many books out can say, okay, well, you can expect X, Y, and Z. And that's been incredibly helpful to have that experience tell us. But yeah, you don't really know because it varies per publisher and it varies per book, right? So the different types of contracts will determine what your experience is. But I've had a great time, and Sourcebooks is wonderful, and my editor's wonderful. Everybody has been just incredible to work with. So I feel very fortunate about that.
We're going to turn it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Sierra?
Okay.
First question. When you were a teenager, what was one of your favorite rom-coms?
Gosh, I'm trying to think back to Can I say early 20s?
Yes.
Early 20s, I remember I was in Dallas for a conference. And I was departing after the conference. I was working in marketing at the time, and I had put on the trade show booth for the company at the conference. And it was the end, and I'm exhausted, and I'm in there's a sense of like, God, that went off without a hitch, because that's what you do when you do events and trade shows. You get to keep your job if you do it well. That's the reward. And I was in, I think it was the Dallas airport, and they had a really decent bookshop in there, like like large, for an airport. And I was in there, and I just wanted a comfort book. I just wanted something to make me laugh. I just wanted something that was just a feel good book, because I was kind of coming off this conference, this intense conference experience where everything had to go off without a hitch. And I found a whole section of Marian Keyes novels, and I had never heard of her. And I'm like, well, these look good. And I picked up her first one, read the first line, and I went, this is it. And I bought it, and it was great. I loved it. I think her first book was Watermelon. And from then on, it was just like, I love this genre, and I would just keep reading. And I think I discovered it then. I've always been a reader, but I think in high school I don't know what I read in high school. I don't remember. But early on, I, really got into it based on that. And I've been loving rom-com and women's fiction ever since, and messy family stories ever since.
Question number 2. If you're walking into a home and there are 3 chairs, one is very firm, one is plush, and one is steady but comfortable, which chair would you pick and why?
Well, am I invited to pick any of the 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Have a seat. Well, I'm going to pick the middle of the road there. Not too extreme, and not too plush, right? Wait, is that the 3 bears? The moms, the middle chair is the really plush one. I'm picking the one that's just right. I'm going for function and comfort, but not overly so. Want to be comfortable, but want to stay peppy.
I love, is this the 3 bears? Yes, it is. Because I saw, this is so fun. When I looked at your cover, I was like, that's the first thing I thought of was the 3 bears and their chairs. So I'm like, you've got to bring that in.
I think that's a good analogy, and I loved this concept. I know that some people are like, what are the chairs about? Well, it's chairs at the table in terms of a family, and they're all like, they're stacked weird. And I actually, oh shoot, I don't have it with me, but I actually have these little tiny chairs. I have it on my Instagram, and I glued them, and I stacked them and then glued them, and it was a pain to do because they don't actually, you have to glue them to make them do that kind of stack. So, I think that's a good analogy for those 3 siblings is, where are they sitting at the table? And that is not a stack that is going to stay up. It's going to teeter and fall. So,
faced with their, different personalities and the essence of home and sitting together, I thought that it fit very well with how you wrote your book.
Yeah, thank you. The cover designer is an incredible designer, and I was just thrilled with this one. So, and it's funny because the paperback will be in yellow. I've seen the paperback version. It'll be the yellow of the words with, I think, the words, and so the colors are reversed. You've got the,
oh,
yeah, it's kind of neat. The yellow will be the background, and the blue will be on the words, which is neat.
That will be fun to see, like the vibrant fill with the yellow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Third question. What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you've just tried?
Oh gosh, I was up in Sonoma County a year or 2 ago, or maybe it was before the pandemic. Time is just, I don't know. I don't know when things happened. And there's an ice cream shop in Guerneville, this little river town, Guerneville, which is really lovely. And they had avocado ice cream. It might have even been avocado and olive oil. I can't even remember, but it was really, and my family was like, and I said, I want to try that. And it was so good. It was so good. And I think it was olive oil too, because it had just a little taste of that, just almost nuttiness in there. And I loved it. It was very odd.
Huh, okay, so it's still got that creamy and sweet essence with the
Yes.
nutty and the avocado base in there?
Yes. Yeah. I know. You
Wow.
wouldn't think it was good, but it was delicious. I loved it.
I have never heard of that before, but I'm oddly fascinated.
Yeah.
Quite the
Keep
combo.
your eye
Yeah.
out. It's a very artisan little shop that I think made their own flavors, but that was, yeah, maybe it'll catch on elsewhere. I
Starting a
endorse it.
new wave. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we end today, Sierra, can you share with our listeners and viewers what living a creatively abundant life means to you?
Oh yeah, I have a lot going on in life. I've got, as I mentioned, two kids. I've got a house that's always needing some work. I've got a full-time job. I've got, a publishing contract to fulfill, and I want to keep writing. So I've got a lot that needs attention and full attention. So it's hard to give space for creativity within that. But I make that space. Maybe I don't watch TV at night and I read a book, or that I give space and time to those creative pursuits. And I think there's a real temptation to put that last, to put that self last, especially when you're working full time and your family. There's a lot of demands. And maybe I do set aside a couple hours on the weekend for sure for myself to do those things. Not always possible. And sometimes I've got to just fit it in where it works. I've become very good at very, streamlined project management. Like, we're doing it this time. And I very, very good organization of time, which is not something I wanted to be great at. But if I want to achieve what I want, which is to publish more books, then I've got to make time for it. And I've had people ask me, where do you find the time? And the answer, in essence, is I love writing. I love writing stories. I love coming up with ideas, publishing or not. I just love writing a story. So I'm going to make time for it. And sometimes that time is little, sometimes that time is a lot, but I'll take whatever I can get. And that's sort of how I know I should probably stop more often and think, gosh, I am so grateful for what I've gotten and where I am. And I do try and I should take more time for that. And just write myself a little note on my calendar, take time to be grateful. But yeah, so you find time, and you find time for what you love and what's important. And if you're not able to find time for what you love and what's important, something's got to change. Not always easy to do, not always possible, but well, I think it is possible. It's just things have to shift, and maybe not always great ways, but it's important. It's really important to have that outlet of creativity, no matter what.
Absolutely. Where can our listeners and viewers find you if they have any questions after the show or about your book?
Oh, I would love people to reach out with questions. I'm happy to talk with people. Instagram's great. Twitter is great. Both of those, I'm at Sierra Godfrey. Both of those are a good place. And send me a question on Twitter. Facebook is also fine. And yeah, you can also email me through my website, sierragodfrey.com. So I'm hitting all of the all of the methods there.
Thank you so much for being here with us. It has been an absolute
Thanks for having
pleasure
me.
to chat with you this morning.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Lori. It's lovely.
Thank you for those who have joined us live and will be listening on the replay. Remember, as you go about the rest of your week, to find the things that are working around you. You are the creator of your own story. What steps are you going to take next? Thank you for joining us, and we will see you right here at 10 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time on Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sierra.
Thank you.